Hello there guys, my name's Unstable Voltage and welcome to my Europa Universalis 4 Common Sense tutorial. We've been through a lot of the game's core mechanics, and in this video we're going to be looking at the actual combat, which makes up a huge portion of the game. Yes, there are ways to get ahead in score by playing diplomatically, via trade or expansion, or by taking other lands through diplomatic means, but a lot of the time you're going to end up fighting. Whether you are playing as a militaristic nation and you're trying to expand by attacking your rivals, or whether you are a smaller nation who is being attacked by your enemies and just having to fend those attacks off. So, battle plays a very big part of the game. And this is probably going to be one of the longer videos because battle is quite an in-depth and complicated thing. And if you really want to know how all of the numbers and the behind-the-scenes dice rolls work, go and check out the EU4 wiki, because I'm not going to be going into that much detail about the specifics of how each individual thing works. But I should be giving you enough information so that you can win a few battles. So we've done some preparation. We have a decent sized army. I've got two armies of 20 regiments here. They're both fully reinforced. Got a few cannons in each of them. If I go and look at my land units, I can see that I'm at 40 of 40, so I have the full size army that I can have. Remember, I can go over that amount, but it'll cost me a lot more money per month to maintain them if I do. As for the war, if we go ahead and click on the diplomatic map mode, which is by default Y, we can see that I have a claim on Artois over here, which belongs to Burgundy. They are going to be the people that I am declaring war on. One of my armies has a leader. This army has a 0 fire, 1 shock, 3 maneuver, 2 siege leader, and that's something that I'll talk about more as we go into this. This army doesn't have a leader. Now you'll also notice we have a number of forts. All of our forts are currently red, which means they are mothballed, and a mothballed fort does absolutely nothing for you. So you want to make sure before you go to war that you unmothball your forts. You may not want to unmothball all of them, because sometimes you may have forts that are, quite well protected in the middle of nowhere. You'll also notice, even if you have all of your forts mothballed and the icon turns red, that the fort in your capital will still show as grey. And the reason for that is that you actually get a bonus level to your capital's fort, regardless of whether or not it has a fort. So if we look here at my fort in Marches, for example, Marches has it says fort level 2. It's got the basic fort, which is a castle. So a castle gives you fort level 2. If we have a look at London here, London also has a castle, which is fort level 2. But if I mouse over down here, it says fort level 3. And that's because the capital always gets an extra fort level, which is why, even though it's mothballed, it still has a garrison of 1,000 men. If we look at the other mothballed forts, they only have, they have 0 because they're mothballed. So let's just go ahead and unmothball everything just to make life easy. So we can go ahead and go into the military tab. So it's shortcut keys F1 and then 0, or you can click on the shield and the military tab. And you've got a handy little button down here that says all of our forts are currently inactive, so 0 of 6 active. Let's click the activate all forts button. You'll now see that they go from red to grey, and if we actually watch them, you'll see that their garrison will go up month by month. I'm just going to increase the speed of the game slightly. Now, this is actually from a slightly older save on my current Let's Play that I'm doing of this game. So if you're currently watching through that and you haven't got to this date, sort of December 1493, you may not want to watch this, but I'm not going to be continuing with what I was doing in the Let's Play, so it shouldn't really spoil anything. But as you can see, as time goes on, the garrison is going up. Now, the maximum garrison here is 2,000, and it goes up by 160 each month. Now, the reason it's 2,000 is because the fort level is 2. If we go and have a look in London, it tells us that our maximum garrison is 3,000, and it's 3,000 because we have that extra fort level. So even if you go ahead and mothball all of your forts, the free 1,000 man garrison that you get in your capital will always remain. You may find that some nations actually have no fort in their capital. Like, here's a good example. Which one of these? This is Nevers' capital down here. Now, Nevers doesn't actually have a fort. They have a workshop, a temple, and a barracks. And as you can see down here, there's no number in the corner. It doesn't say they have a castle, but they still have fort level 1 with a 1,000-man garrison. That's the free level that you always get in your capital. So I'm just going to wait for these forts to get some garrison in them. Like I said, a mothballed fort doesn't do anything for you, but a fully working fort does quite a bit of stuff. Now, this is a change that was made in Common Sense. And whether or not you've got the Common Sense expansion, the Common Sense DLC, if you've got the updated version of the game, you will actually have this particular mechanic. It used to be that you could build a fort in every single province, and a fort would just make it take longer for the enemy to siege out a province. Now, forts have actually changed, and while you can still build a fort in every province, because of the maintenance costs, they are a lot more expensive. Now, forts do a couple of things. First of all, they make it more difficult to siege a province. Any province that doesn't have a fort doesn't have a defence and can be sieged in a single month, or what's called a single siege tick. And a province with a fort takes a lot longer to siege. Now, forts also do a thing called zone of control. What you will see, if I have one of my own armies selected, if we just go up here and have a look at England, if I've actually got one of my own armies selected, you will see that we have all of these little walls with a blue circle around them. Now, those blue circles on walls indicate provinces in which I have zone of control from a fort. So Marches is putting out a zone of control over all of these provinces. And you can see that if I mouse over one of those provinces, it says, within your fort in Marches zone of control. And you'll also see some of these ones down here as well. These ones are within London's zone of control. So a fort, providing it's not mothballed, affects all of its neighbouring provinces. Now, London still counts because it does actually have a castle there. If you only have the free fort level 1 and you don't actually have an actual fort in your capital, you don't get the zone of control. You still have a fort, which makes it harder to siege, but you won't get the zone of control unless you actually have a castle or above in there. And these zone of controls do a couple of things. First of all, a zone of control means that if an enemy should capture or occupy a province that is next to a fort, and then they move out of that province, your fort will recapture it. That's the way it works. So if a province that is being occupied is within a fort zone of control, and the enemy move out of that province once it's been captured, your fort will flip it back over. If they leave a man there, it won't flip. If they move onto the fort, it won't flip. But the only way they can stop them flipping back is to actually siege out the fort. The other mechanic is the zone of control for movement. So let's say the enemy landed a fleet in Cornwall and dropped some men in Cornwall. And then they moved into here, into Gloucestershire. Now, if they moved into Gloucestershire, Gloucestershire is within the zone of control of Marches. Now, once they've moved into Gloucestershire, they've only got two options. They can move into Marches, because that's where the fort is, or they can move back into Cornwall. They can't move here into Oxfordshire, they can't move here into Wessex, because they're stuck within the zone of control. So if they want to get over here to Derby, they've got to siege out Marches first and take the fort, then they'll be able to move freely. So forts are very, very useful for blocking your enemy's movement. Now, your enemy will have forts as well. Now, unfortunately, you won't always be able to see those because it is very, very dependent on whether or not you're actually at war. Now, at the moment in this game, as I was playing it, I actually had a little bit of a coalition against me. So if I look at the coalition map mode here, you can see that a lot of these darker red provinces indicate countries that are currently in the coalition against me. And this is the reason why I'm just speeding this up, because as you can see, the coalition is actually dissolving. This was something that was actually happening in the game that I was playing. As my aggressive expansion was going away, these people started to leave the coalition. And that's something that we will allow to tick on and happen. So a couple of things that you're going to need to keep your eye on when you're going to war. There's a couple of very, very useful figures. I'm just going to let this tick through to the next year. Gain some free money. Always make sure you've got a decent amount of money in the bank before you go to war. Very, very important, because you'll most likely need to get some mercenaries. And it's much easier to do that if you have money, instead of having to keep taking out loans. So most of this coalition should go away quite shortly. So what you want to do is actually go and have a look in the military tab again, which is F1 and 0, or click the shield and click the military tab. And you want to look at your army tradition, your land morale, your military tactics, and your discipline. Those are the things that are most important when you're fighting. Your land morale is your base morale when you actually go into a fight. So the way that a battle works is you don't just take damage physically. You will suffer casualties and you will lose men, but you actually have I'll call it a health bar, but it's actually a morale bar. And when that gets to 0, your army will break and shatter and try to run away. So having higher morale is always better for you because it means you're more likely to win a fight. Higher base morale is one of the best things you can have to be good at combat. Your military tactics dictates how much damage your units take in combat. Actually says that at the bottom. Military tactics reduces the damage your units take in combat. The higher the better. So regardless of whether or not you're winning or losing a battle based on the morale health bar, if you have higher tactics, you will lose less men in the battles. And the discipline is a combination of things. As it says here, tactics, leadership, morale, and equipment are all important in battle. However, so too was the discipline of the troops. Steady troops that could hold their formation despite the punishment of the enemy would prove much more effective in combat. Damage done is multiplied by your discipline, and damage taken is reduced or increased depending on your discipline. So by having high discipline, you increase the amount of damage you can do to the enemy, and you decrease the amount of damage that the enemy does to you. So pretty much as you would expect, the higher the numbers, the better everything's going to be for you. You also want to look here at your army tradition, because the army tradition is gained in a couple of ways. There are some events that give you army tradition. There are some decisions and texts that will give you some army tradition. You will also find some missions give you army tradition. But most importantly, winning battles, winning fights will give you army tradition. Army tradition affects a few things. As you can see, it improves the morale of our armies. It improves our recovery speed of both manpower and morale. And it improves our siege ability. It's also important when you are hiring a leader. Now, it will tell you on this screen how many leaders you can have without upkeep. Now, leaders will count generals, conquistadors, admirals, and explorers. You do have the option to make your ruler or your heir into a general. Now, you can't do it if it's a female leader, but if you make your ruler or your heir into a general, they don't count towards the number of leaders that you can have without upkeep. You can go over this number of leaders. If you do so, you will pay an extra 1 military power per month while you are over that amount. Now, when you hire a leader, which you can do by pressing one of these buttons down here at the bottom, it will cost you 50 military power to get a general or a conquistador, and it will cost you 50 diplo power to get an admiral or a explorer. Now, remember, you only get conquistadors or explorers if you have the idea group, which is this one here, exploration ideas, and you get quest for the new world. That's the thing that unlocks conquistadors and explorers. Conquistadors and explorers are the ones who can go into terra incognita, but now, since the art of war, they're not as powerful as generals or admirals. So if you're specifically going in for combat, make sure you get a general or an admiral. When you roll for a general, and it costs you those 50 points, you will have a random number of these pips assigned to one. Let's just roll for one just because we can. So I'm going to click to roll a general. So it asks us if we want to spend 50 military power. I'm going to say yes. And we get a guy here who has 1 in fire, 2 in shock, 2 in maneuver, and none in siege. Now, he's actually not too bad. Early on in the game, shock is much more important than fire. And this is because in combat has 2 phases. There's the shock phase and there's the fire phase. In the early game, the shock phase is much more important because mostly all of your men are armed with pikes and swords and melee weapons. Later on in the game, when we start moving to firearms, muskets and so forth, then the fire phase becomes much more important. So we've got a second leader now, which will be very, very good for us. We could dismiss him if we wanted to. We can't dismiss this guy because he's currently commanding troops. But what we're going to go and do is we're going to go and click on this army that doesn't have a leader. And you can tell he doesn't have a leader because there's no star. So whenever you see a star above a army's banner, that means they have a leader. Now you'll see 1, 2 or 3 stars, which is a quick indication of the general's power, and that is determined by the number of these pips that they have. So the more pips they have in total, and the maximum they can have is 6 in each one of these 4 categories. The more pips they have, the more stars you will see above the banner. Now the number of pips that you have is random, but it's based on your army tradition. So the higher the army tradition you have, the better the general you will get. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this army here. I'm going to click at the top where it says no leader, and I'm going to go and assign the one that is green, which means he's currently unassigned. I could assign the other guy, and he'd just move from army to army because leaders can teleport. But let's go and assign the other guy. So we now have 2 armies, both of them have a leader. Now you can only assign leaders to armies that are in friendly territory. You can't do them when you're in the enemy territory. So I'm just going to let it go on for 1 more month. Maybe these guys will leave the coalition, but probably not. But we're probably in a good point to actually go and declare war. Yep, nobody's left. That's fine. So just before we go in, just have a quick look, because we have the option for a technology. Isn't anything that's useful for us. So let's have a look at our free advisor slot. Now we don't actually have a military advisor at the moment, so it might be worth actually having a look at what we've got here. Now we have a couple of options, and we can get a really cheap guy, and he'll actually give us 10% to the morale of our armies, and that's going to be really, really useful, because that will give us a boost to our morale. We also want to make sure that we have a decent amount of manpower, because we're going to need to be reinforcing our troops as time goes on. So we could also get a land maintenance modifier, which is one of our ideas here. That'll save us some money. Cost us some military power. Let's just go ahead and do that for the purpose of this video, for this demonstration. And let's go and declare war on Burgundy. So a couple of things you want to make sure of before you actually do declare war is have a look and see who your enemy's allies are. So if I just right click on Burgundy here, I can see that they're allied with Milan, the Papal State, with Lucca and Utrecht. And they don't appear to have any vassals of their own. And obviously I can look at myself here. I'm allied with Brittany, Austria, Castile and Portugal. So I've got a free diplomat. I'm going to go ahead, right click on Burgundy. I'm going to declare war, and I have a couple of options here, as we talked about in the previous video with Casus Belli. I can take Artois, which is my own CB, to grab this province here, or there's actually some French CBs. Now in this current game, while I'm playing as England, I'm actually the leader in a personal union with France. So basically France are my subject, and because they're my subject, I can actually declare war using their CBs. But I want to use my CB, which is to take Artois. And if we look over here, the CB is conquest. They hold provinces that we have claims on. The war goal is to take Artois. Tells us who they're allied with. We can see the list of allies down here, and we can see our allies on this side. Only Austria is going to come in. So I'm going to hit declare war. And the first thing that you'll notice that happens, you get the little flame up here to say that you're at war. And because Burgundy is the war leader on the opposite side, we get this little flag down at the bottom. Now, if I go and click on that at the moment, it will only show myself and my vassals or my subjects. So obviously France came in straight the way, and Burgundy. If we go ahead and unpause it, we will find that the defensive calls and the offensive calls go out. So first of all, the defensive calls go out. Burgundy calls in Milan, the Papal State, and Utrecht. And then the offensive calls go out, and I call in Austria. Now you get some very, very useful information on this screen. At a quick glance, you can see what the war goal is. The war goal is, the CB is conquest, and the war goal is to take Artois. So the purpose of any war is you want to try and get war score, which is this little bar here. Starts off in the middle at 0. If it goes into the green, you're winning. If it goes into the red, you're losing. The most you can get in war score in either direction is 100% in your favour, or minus 100% if it's in the enemy's favour. Now if you look over here, what you will see is your current ticking war score is 0, and you can gain 25 more war score by achieving the war goal. So our war goal is Artois. While the enemy hold Artois, they will actually get ticking war score in their favour, and they can get up to 25 war score from that. If I grab it, then I will start getting ticking war score, and I can get up to 25 war score. So it's always worth checking what the war goal is and making sure that you grab the war goal. And this actually tells you here that our current ticking war score is 0. At the bottom you can see a list of the battles won, which will tell you basically where you've got any war score from. You see a lot of information along here that tells you how many units and ships each of the two sides have in total. So as you can see, we have 60,000 infantry compared to the 44,000 on the opposing side. We have 22,000 cavalry compared to 15,000, and we both have about 9,000 artillery. There's also some display for the amount of ships that you have, but that's not something we're going to be looking at too heavily in this video. You'll also notice that you've got a couple of little flags and things next to certain names. The star always represents the war leader, so obviously the war is between me and Burgundy. Red flags indicate people that have come in as an alliance call, and people in the alliance can be pieced out separately. You'll also see sometimes people have little doves next to them, which means they can't be separately pieced out, but that's something that we'll go over in the next video when we're talking about the peace treaty. There's a lot of other important information here, such as the war enthusiasm. So basically, a country with high war enthusiasm is very, very unlikely to want to peace out. A country with low war enthusiasm is probably broke, out of manpower, and is tired of fighting. You've also got war exhaustion, which goes up as time goes on, and that's something that I will just look at in a minute. Shows you the stability and any blockade percentage going on. Now, war exhaustion is found under the stability and expansions tab, so it's F1 and 8, or the shield and then the little crown with the flag. And you can see war exhaustion here. My war exhaustion is currently at 0 because I've been at peace for a while, and war exhaustion goes down automatically when you're at peace. But as you start to get war exhaustion, it starts to have a lot of negative effects on you, and we'll talk about those as we actually go in. So now we're at war, you can see a number of things have changed on the map. First of all, you will see there's green banners, which is my troops, blue banners, which are my allies, so that includes my subjects, such as France, and also includes my allies, such as Austria, and then we can see any enemy troops have the red banner on them there. We've also got an enemy ship over here, and we can talk about naval combat a little bit. So I think what I will actually do is just go and grab my heavies at this point, because naval combat is probably one of the easier things to talk about. We don't get involved in naval combat very often, but we'll see if we can actually go ahead and start a naval battle over here. We did manage to get there in time, so we've gone ahead and engaged a enemy fleet here. Now, we've got a lot of ships. We're going to win this one easily. We have 27 ships here. And you can see by scrolling down the list on the left-hand side, we've got our 7 heavies and we've got 20 lights because our trade fleet just turned up at the right time. And if we look at their fleet, we can see all they have is 2 lights. Now, their morale bar is nearly depleted the moment we attacked because we just had such a huge advantage over them. If you also look at the base morale, which is a little trumpet here, our base morale is 3.5, their base morale is 2.2. Now, some of our ships may take a little bit of damage, but their ships are going to get destroyed very, very quickly. If we just unpause, and we won that naval battle very, very quickly. So we may have to go and find another one that we can use to demonstrate. So let's go ahead and try and attack this army that is in Artois here. We'll use this 20 stack. Now, there are a couple of things that you really do have to be careful of when you're going to attack. First of all, attackers nearly always get a penalty. You can get a terrain penalty, and you can get a crossing penalty. Now, if I actually go and left-click on Picardy here, and mouse over this little river icon at the top, and it will actually tell me where all the rivers flow, because it's hard to tell sometimes from the map. Now, this says that a river flows between this province and Paris, Caux, Artois, and Calais. Now, I want to move into Artois, and if I move into Artois from here, there will be a river crossing penalty, which will give me -1 to my rolls. Now, if we look at Calais, for example, Calais only has a river crossing between Calais and Picardy. So what I could do is I could move into Calais, and then from Calais, I could move into Artois, and I wouldn't get the crossing penalty. But my leader here has 3 maneuver, and they don't have a leader. So because I have higher maneuver than that army, I won't get the crossing penalty anyway. I would still get the terrain penalty, but the terrain penalty is farmlands. It actually says under terrain farmlands will cross a river, so it lets me know there. So most flat terrain doesn't give you any penalty. Difficult terrain, such as marshes, woods, forest, highlands and hills, and jungle, will give you a -1 terrain penalty. And mountains are the harshest of environments, they will give you a -2 terrain penalty. But there's no terrain penalty for farmlands, they don't have a leader, I'm going to march in with my army. So all I do, select my army, right click on the province. If I mouse over my army, it will tell me that I will arrive in Artois on the 13th of June. So it's going to take just 4 days to get there. Doesn't even look like Burgundy is at full morale, because we can see the little green bar on the right-hand side of their troops. Now, you can see your own morale in the same way. It's a little bit difficult to read here, but if you've got the army selected, you can also see your morale up here on the left-hand side, upper left-hand side of the army panel. Now, the reason my morale isn't quite full at the moment is because, if you remember, we did just pick up that new advisor that gave us 10% to our maximum morale. So it's put our morale maximum up by 10%, but we haven't quite charged up to that yet. Now we see this little padlock that has appeared next to our unit, because that means we're now committed. We're more than halfway there. So let's go and jump in, and we'll be able to see the different phases of the battle. So I've hit pause at the moment I've walked in. And you can see a lot of information about the battle on this panel down in the bottom corner. First of all, you can see the type of land that we're fighting in. You can see who our leader is and what his abilities are. 0 in fire, 1 in shock, 3 maneuver, 2 in siege, and the enemy has no leader. Also on here, you can see the quota of different troops. We have a lot of infantry, we have some cavalry, and we have some cannons. Now you'll see the little green plus. The army's cavalry ratio is 28%. If the ratio of cavalry to infantry is above 50%, then the army will receive the insufficient support modifier. So insufficient support, I talked about this before when I spoke about building armies, it does depend on the tech group you are in and the nation you are playing as, because some things like the hordes are allowed to have a much higher ratio of horses, a higher ratio of cavalry. If you go above your cavalry ratio and get insufficient support, you will take a 25% penalty to your tactics in that fight. So try and make sure you have a decent amount of infantry compared to everything else. Now we can see that our discipline is 100% on both sides. We have a slightly higher base morale. It's 3.6 compared to the enemy's 3.1. So we actually started with higher morale. And our enemy actually has slightly higher military tactics. Now one of the important things you will notice is this little section in the centre. This tells us what the current phase is. We're currently on the fire phase. And these little coloured blocks indicate the different troops. Now they only have 6 regiments. And their 6 regiments, all infantry, are lined up on the front row. Now, most of our infantry is lined up on the front row, and the infantry is represented by the crosses. The little diagonal lines represent cavalry, and then our artillery, our 2 artillery, are the 2 little dots that are hidden at the back. Now, the computer, the system, the game does all of this for you. The game will put your troops in the right place. It'll normally put infantry at the front, in the middle, with cavalry at the flanks, and the artillery behind. If you mouse over any of these units, it will tell you which units it can attack. So we're actually flanking their army, because we have a lot more men, and our army is a lot wider. Now, the maximum width you can have is the light grey. So this grey area represents the maximum army width. Now, it does depend on the area that you're fighting in, because if we were to be fighting in mountains, for example, if we mouse over mountains, it says combat width would be -50%. So if we were fighting in the mountains here, then this combat width would only be half of what it is now, which would be much, much narrower. So as it is, farmland's nice and open. We can field a very wide army, a very wide front line, and this will increase as military tech moves on. As you can see, if we actually mouse over the little arrow here, it tells us what the current combat width is. It's 25%, which is 15%, which is a base of 15, and plus 10 from Burgundy's technology. So, as I said, the combat width actually increases depending on your military tech level, but it always goes on whoever's is the highest. So if Burgundy's military tech is higher than mine and they have a higher combat width, then the combat width of the entire fight will be based on their figure. So let's go back in and unpause, and we will see that every 3 days we switch between the fire phase and the shock phase. Now, injured units will retreat to the back, and fresher units will come to the front. Now you can see these rolls going on. These rolls happen every phase, and they will be between 0 and 9. And basically, the higher the roll, the more damage you're going to do. If you have a leader, their pips get added to the roll. So in the shock phase, my leader has 1 shock. So when we roll the dice on the shock phase, we add 1 to the roll. So in total, we have 6. If we had something like a river crossing penalty or a terrain penalty, those -1s and -2s would deduct from our roll. We've also got the French army about to come in and help here. Now, as you can see, Burgundy's morale is going down much, much more quickly than ours, and in fact, we may even break their army before the French arrive. You'll also see some numbers appearing above our heads, 90, 42, which means the Burgundians lost 90 troops, we lost 42. Now that the French army's arrived, if you actually look at the battle screen here, you can see we've got blue icons. These blue icons represent the French troops. Now, at the moment, the French troops are at the back. They haven't got into position yet. But now, on the next phase, they've actually managed to start to reinforce. The French have slotted their artillery in at the back. They've put most of their infantry on the front with their cavalry flanking. It does take a little bit of time. But what you can see happen there is the battle was won. And this screen gives you some information about the battle and its outcome. It shows you who won, shows you how much war score you gained for the win, shows you how many units were lost on each side, and we actually completely wiped out that Burgundian army. We gained a little bit of prestige, we gained a little bit of army tradition, and we gained a little bit of war exhaustion. They lost prestige, they gained some army tradition even though they lost, and they gained more war exhaustion than we did. Considerably more war exhaustion than we did. So let's go ahead and untick that because the noise drives me bonkers. And you can now see that we actually have 1% war score. Now, what I'm going to do here is I am going to split this army in. I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to move this guy forward up towards Artois. And which one of my leaders has the siege, actually? This guy has a siege of 2. This guy doesn't have any siege, I don't think. No, this guy doesn't have any siege. So I'm going to move this guy through into Vermandois. And now that we've got this guy in this province, we should start sieging. Let's go ahead and unpause. And now we've started sieging. You can tell that we're sieging because we have the 100% here. Now, the reason it says 100% is because there's no fort. And because there's no fort, we have a 100% chance of being able to siege the province in a single tick. You also only need 1 man here. So I can hit D to detach a siege and move the rest of the army out into Hainaut here, leaving 1 man behind. Now, it doesn't really demonstrate the point, because I've got France here being annoying. So France have got a lot of... In fact, it's actually saying that France are the attacker here, because I split my men up. This is a little bug that can happen in this game. Sometimes when you split an army and move, an ally will become the attacker. So France is technically the attacker here, but that's fine. Now, what you can see when you're sieging, there's quite a lot of stuff going on here on the screen. You can see the defender, which is Burgundy. There's no garrison here because there is no fort. And we don't have any progress towards a siege because it isn't really a proper siege. So all we have to do here is wait until this gets to this little green circle, which takes... I think it's 29 days. Each siege phase is 29 days. So it's a base of 30, but our power projection reduces that. And France's siege ability is helping as well. And it tells you the number of days. So in 9 days, in 8 days, in 7 days, in 6 days. As that goes down, we will eventually capture that province. So what we're also going to do is we're going to take this guy and we're going to move him into Rethel, because Rethel actually has a fort. So let's move him into Rethel. Now, there we go. France won the siege, and they actually flipped it straight over to me because it's my colour, so that makes a lot of sense. Let's go and move this guy into Cranbray now. Now, one thing you can do is you can actually leave a unit in a province that's already been occupied, and you will actually gain money from the province because you have this little bar up here, which is the loot bar. Every province has one. The amount of loot that's available in each province varies depending on the province, and it tells you when you mouse over it what all the modifiers are. But each month, while you have units standing there, you will gain money. As it says here, There's 13.01 ducats worth of loot in this province, and our armies will loot 0.16 ducats next month. The reason it's 0.16 ducats is because I only have a single unit there. The more units you have, the more you will loot per month. And also, certain units are better at looting, such as cavalry, will give you more loot than your armies. So let's go and move this guy. I'm not bothered about looting. I'm going to go and move him into Cambrai so we can go and take that. Now, I've got a big army over here. Now, I've moved into Rethel here, which has a fort. But if I want to move over here, it won't let me. The reason it won't let me is because I've moved into this province that has a fort. So this province actually has zone of control. And if I zoom out a little bit, because it's hard to see when you're in close, if I zoom out a little bit, you can actually see all of these provinces that have a yellow circle on them. Now, a yellow circle means it's the enemy's zone of control. Blue circles are our zone of control. Yellow circle is the enemy's zone of control. Now, I can move into these because if I mouse over them, it actually shows a green arrow. If I weren't able to move into them, it would be showing me a red cross instead. Now, I can't move directly from Rethel to Luxembourg because of the zone of control in Rethel. So if I was to move here, I'd have to move all the way through Barrois and out the other side through somebody else's terrain. So we're going to stay here. Now, another important thing to remember is the defender always gets a slight advantage because whenever there is a penalty to terrain, the penalty is always to the attacker. So you really want to try and let the enemy attack you if at all possible. And it's also worth remembering, though, that the attacker does get a slight boost to their morale when they attack. So there's a couple of things that I want to allow to happen before I continue on with this tutorial. So we're just going to wait for a few things. Now, this is one of the things that I wanted to happen here. So what we've got here is we have Hainaut that has been occupied. Now, if I move out of Hainaut now, I'm going to tell these guys to move out of Hainaut and move into Vermandois. And what you'll see happen now is there's actually a fort in Namur. And because there's a fort in Namur, if I move my units out of Hainaut here, which we've already captured it, Hainaut flips back to Burgundy. And that's because the zone of control from this fort has flipped it back. Now, when the new patch comes out, because I'm currently playing on version 1.12, when 1.13 comes out, it will actually take a month for the flip back to happen. So France are actually in a fight here. Now, France are actually the defenders because France were here first and Utrecht actually attacked France. Now, they're in farmland, so they're not really getting any sort of bonuses there. So what we're going to look at here is this is an actual siege in a province that has a fort. Now, you can see there's a lot more information here. It tells us that if our leader has any siege, that gives us some more progress. Cannons also help the siege progress as well. And the most important thing to look at when you're sieging, really, is this number here. This number tells you your percentage chance each month or each siege tick, which, remember, at the moment is 29 days. If we mouse over this, it's actually 32 days in this particular province. So each siege tick is 32 days. So every 32 days, we currently have minus 42% chance of winning the siege. So we're not going to win that siege at all. Now, in fact, France is actually being attacked by a really big army here. France are getting some more guys thrown in. But I'm going to go and take these guys, and I'm going to go down here and try and help. Now, remember, even though we're putting more troops in, technically we're still the defender. Well, France is still the defender because France were there first. So France had the defensive position. So we're going to go down here with this army. I'm going to keep my eye on my other army. There's another big army coming in here from Milan, but that should be fine. There's a big army coming in from the Papal State as well. Now, in this particular game, France are very, very good. So that should really help with things there. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this guy from Cambrai into Rethel. Now, we can't actually take Rethel because he's only a single stack, and I'll show you that in a moment. But let's see if we can win this fight over here first. There's a lot of units coming in. Now, if we actually have a look at this, it's actually our leader that is taking control of it. They have a lot more artillery on their side. Now, artillery is useful in... artillery is very useful in winning sieges, but also artillery is very, very good at dealing lots of damage to the enemy. But you also want to make sure that your artillery isn't on the front. If you actually look here, on their side, they've actually got artillery in the front row, which means but we've got cavalry in the middle as well. So it's not an ideal setup. Now, we're actually losing quite a lot of morale here. Now, Austria are coming with another 11,000 men, so that's going to help. Now, what I'm going to do over here, first of all, there's a couple of things that I just want to quickly show you. This little icon that appears next to the castle, that's showing us that we have too few men to siege the province. You need 3,000 men for every fort level. So this is a fort level 2, which means it needs at least 6,000 men to be able to siege it. Now, the last time we moved out of Hainaut, we lost the siege. What I'm going to do is move from Hainaut into this province. Now, again, it won't let me do it because of Rethel. Rethel actually has a zone of control, so I can't move directly into Namur. Now, this means that I'm going to be leaving Hainaut, and Namur's fort will flip Hainaut back. So let's tell this guy to move into Rethel instead, and we'll grab the fort down here. Let's keep our eye on this fort, on this fight, and see what happens when Austria arrives. Doesn't help that we are getting some pretty terrible rolls. So Austria are going to throw their men in. As you can see, our army is much smaller than theirs. They do have much larger numbers. So Austria managed to get their men in. Now, as we can see, we do have higher base morale, but they do have higher military tactics. What I could do, and I probably will do, is I'm going to get these guys to group up, and I'm going to hit D to detach a siege and take the remaining 10 men and bring them down and try and throw them into help. Now, it's left 8,000 men behind. That's fine. And hopefully we will get there just in time to help out with this fight. Now, you do have the option to retreat. As long as you don't have a little white flag with a red cross and line through it, you can actually click on your army and tell them to run away. Now, if you tell your army to retreat, you will actually lose some war score, but you may be able to retreat to the province that you want to, and you won't lose as many men as you will if you stand around and let your morale run out. When your morale runs out, you will actually get white flagged, and you will retreat and you'll run away, usually to a province that's quite a good distance away from where the battle began. So we should win this fight now, just in terms of numbers. So let's go ahead and wait for that battle to complete. So as you can see, the enemy's army's dwindling down now. They don't have very much left at all. Our army's a little bit all over the place, but we do still have some men there. So now we've won that fight. And as you can see, it shows you everyone that was involved, and it shows you what was lost and gained in terms of prestige, war score, war exhaustion, and units. Now, you'll also see here that all of the enemy troops, because there was more than one army, they've all got white flagged. They're retreating. So they're going to run away, and they can't be engaged until they stop. I'm going to group my army back up. We actually have to run pause, because you can't really do anything until one day after. We're going to group that army back up and move back up here. Now, another thing you'll notice is that this siege going on is just said walls breached. And you can see that by the little castle, or the little wall icon is now turned into a broken wall. This means we can actually hit this button, which will order an assault. Now, it will be costly. It'll cost us some military power, and we will actually lose some troops for doing it. But it will improve the speed of the siege. So let's go ahead and just click it. So we're going to assault here. So let's let that happen, and we'll see what happens. You can see that our morale will now start going down, because we're actually attacking the fort. So that's not going to be particularly good for us, because we will end up losing numbers. But we can go ahead and throw some more units in to try and help. But we won the siege, so that was good. So what we're going to do now is we can take that guy and move him into Namur. We can take these guys and move them into Hainaut. So let's let everyone move in. There's going to be a very, very easy fight to win over there, because they only have one guy. And as you can see, we actually have a river crossing penalty this time. And the reason for that is I didn't actually have a leader here. Now, they didn't have a leader either, which means we had the same amount of maneuver. So because we had the same amount of maneuver or less, we actually get the river crossing penalty, which means we take -1 to all of our rolls. Now, if you actually start a fight and you don't have a river crossing penalty, but then you bring in another army into the battle that does get a river crossing penalty, that penalty gets applied to the entire battle. So be careful with that one. It's also worth checking your armies from time to time and seeing how strong the individual regiments are. Most of the regiments in this army are almost at full power. We've got plenty of manpower to help them recover, so that's fine. But when you start getting armies like this one, where you've got relatively small regiments, might be a good time to consolidate. Consolidating will give you fewer regiments, but it means the regiments will be stronger. And that is going to be more useful in battles because it means the regiments won't have to juggle around for position by putting fully healed regiments on the front line and moving the injured ones to the back and out of the way. So sometimes it's better to have a stronger front line. Now, I said I was going to talk about war exhaustion. We'll go back and have a look at that now. If we go and click on the stability and expansion, you can now see that we have got some war exhaustion, and the war exhaustion is rising, mainly from attrition. But the war exhaustion has quite a few effects. It increases the cost to your diplomatic annexation and integration. It increases national unrest. It reduces your manpower recovery speed. It increases shipbuilding time and recruitment time. It increases core creation cost. It reduces your siege ability, and it reduces your goods produced. So war exhaustion can go up to plus 20, and when it gets up to plus 20, it's very, very costly. You can reduce it down. You can spend, well, in this case, 84 diplomatic power, but I think the base is 75. But you can spend diplomatic power to reduce your war exhaustion by 2 each time you do it. So keep your eye on your war exhaustion and make sure that it doesn't go too high. So the purpose of any war is to try and get as much war score against your opponent as possible. And war score is gained in 2 ways. First of all, by sieging and occupying provinces. Secondly, by winning battles. Now, any battles won, the war score is awarded to the war leader. So if France goes off and wins a fight, then that war score is my personal war score. It gets added to my war score. However, if France occupies a province and turns it over to me, that's my war score. If France occupies a province and keeps it for themselves and doesn't flip it over, that war score is their war score, because you can have different parties within a battle. And I can't really show it in this particular video because we are playing as the war leader, but sometimes you're the lesser party in a war and you will have your own war score against somebody. If I was to go and click on the Sue for Peace button here, we can see that our personal war score is 12. If we were to click on France, I don't think it'll let us do it for the others, but sometimes we'd be down the bottom of the list because we would be an ally in a war, and we might have different war score to the actual war score. That's something that I'll talk about though in the next video. So now we've got Hainaut here, we've actually sieged it. What I'm going to do is move the army out, and I'm actually moving through Cambrai. The reason I want to do that is because if you remember last time, when we moved out of Hainaut, we lost the siege. It flipped back over because there's a fort in Namur. Now, even though we haven't captured Namur yet, we do have an army there. Because we've got an army there, it means that that fort isn't currently putting its zone of control on Hainaut. It still puts its zone of control down as far as movement goes, but because it's got troops in there trying to siege it out, that will actually stop it from flipping back over. Now, it's very important to try and take out provinces that do have forts. First of all, they're worth a lot more war score. But secondly, taking out a province that has forts is a requirement in order to sue for peace. It didn't used to be, but it now is. If you try and get peace from somebody and you don't have any captured forts in the area, then they pretty much will always say no. Now remember, you can also use the diplomatic map mode and zoom out and you can see who you're at war with. So there's a lot of land down here, which is enemy land. Now mostly Burgundy's army's down there, but they may be coming back. That's probably that army that retreated that we actually won that battle against a little while ago. Again, there's a battle going on down here. Once again, we've got a crossing penalty. Now, that's a little bit weird because we did actually have a leader with us, but there's actually one Austrian troop here, and that Austrian troop got here first, and he didn't have a leader. So because he arrived first, he would have got the crossing penalty, because he crossed a river with no leader. So even though we reinforced, and our army did have a leader with extra manoeuvre, we still had the crossing penalty because we'd already got it. Now, having a leader with your army is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, you get the advantage of their pips in the battle. But secondly, it increases the supply limit of a province, and I've talked about this in a previous video. But basically, each province has a supply limit, which is the maximum number of men that can stand in them without getting attrition, although you'll always get attrition in enemy territory. But if you have a leader, with the army. You'll take less attrition, and you'll also have a higher supply limit in any province that are... Well, it won't be a higher supply limit in the province. The army will have a smaller supply weight. And secondly, an army with a leader will move more quickly as well. So that is basically how combat works, how warfare works. We can see that France are getting attacked here. I'm going to move these guys in and try and reinforce. Now, some of them do have to go the long way round, and this is something that you are going to be very mindful of. It's very, very good to try and siege out people's provinces, but I'd really advise against doing that until you've dealt with most of their armies. I'm going to go ahead and speed the game up a little bit here. Now, unfortunately, we can't really see what's going on with this fight because we don't actually have any of our own troops in it. All we can see is the little morale indicator down here. Now, once we actually get some men in there, assuming we get there on time, and indeed we did, now we can actually select the army and see what is going on. So, Milan, in this case, actually have the crossing penalty because they do have a leader with a manoeuvre of 2. But it's quite possible that our leader... Well, we weren't there to begin with, but it's quite possible that somebody's come in without a leader and given them a crossing penalty. Burgundy are going to try and reinforce. And in fact, they will probably manage it. Was tempting to try and break this siege up here. Now, if it looks like that we might lose this battle, and to be honest, with the rolls they're getting, it looks like we may. They do have a bigger army. They've got some cannons at the back. Right, this fight isn't going well, so I'm going to select my army. And I'm going to go and right-click up here and tell them to retreat. Now, as you can see, they have retreated, but this little army that was left has actually broken. So they're running off somewhere randomly, quite far away. They will want to friendly territory, but they're actually running quite far away. And we're losing a lot of units now. We've actually lost quite a lot of men. This is the point where I should be hiring some mercenaries or hiring some new men. Now, one thing I might do, I was going to make declaring peace into a separate video, but it's quite a simple, straightforward process. So, just having a look at this, we don't actually have enough war score yet to take our war goal, but you can to get what we want from the war, which is a 12. But we are getting a good ticking war score here, and you can actually see at the bottom we've got the list of all the battles won and lost. We have one more than we've lost. There are some other types of war goals. This one's conquest, which means we're trying to take land. But there is a war goal which is superiority, which means you have to win 80% or more of the battles. And if that's the case, that's where you get the ticking war score from. Now, other useful things that you can do as well is if you have any subjects... Now, I don't actually have... Even though France is technically a subject, this only works with vassals. You'll actually have this button here, which allows you to tell a certain subject to either be no focus, which means they basically go around on their own and pretty much do what they want. Or you can tell them to be aggressive, which means they'll go around and they'll actively hunt down the enemy armies and they'll try to siege provinces. Or you can tell them to be supportive, which means they'll tend to follow your armies around and try to help you out. You can also go to an enemy province... And down here at the bottom where it says no objective, you can click on that and you can tell one of your allies, I'd like you to siege that province out. And you can click on another province, click on no objective and go, I'd like Austria to siege that province out. So it's just giving some basic war direction. And then we can go ahead and we can hire mercenaries and we can hire men. Now, you can also hire mercenaries in occupied territory as well. So we can go ahead and grab a stack of mercenaries in all these provinces here that we have managed to capture. So for the purposes of keeping this video under an hour, which is already going to be difficult to do, I am going to speed things up. Now, he's probably coming over here to try and kill that unit. Unfortunately, he's going to have a problem with the fort in Poitou. He doesn't have enough men there to siege it, as you can tell by that icon, and he can't move through because of the fort mechanics. So this guy should be able to safely work his way back up. Got to be careful because there are a lot of enemy units around. But we're just going to try, if we can, and get everybody back up here to a relatively reasonable position. We're still going to try and siege out this province here if we can. There's a lot of big stacks wandering around. let us go ahead and grab ourselves some more mercenaries where we can. Normally it's going to be infantry that you're creating, because it tends to be infantry that you lose the most of, because your infantry are the guys on the front lines. So just watching where these guys are going into. Those guys are going into Paris. Now, unfortunately, I think they arrived first. Oh, no, they didn't. But all I can do here is I can group these guys up and get these guys to move in. There's a big stack standing there in Luxembourg. I think they're actually going to go and come down here and try and help with this fight. I've got a lot more men, which I can select and tell them to get in. Now, whenever you create new units, they don't have full morale, but throwing them in like this can sometimes make or break the fight. Now, we're probably actually going to lose this fight because we lost a fight somewhere. So let's just go ahead and let this fight carry on until we lose. And in fact, we're going to lose that fight up there as well. So I'm not going to tell them to retreat. I'm just going to let the fight lose. There we go. We've lost the fight. And our men will automatically break and move down to friendly territory. And again, this is another fight that we could try and retreat from, but we don't really have anywhere that we could go. So that is basically how combat works. I mean, we didn't cover the ship combat too much, but naval warfare isn't really all that in depth. The most complicated thing at the moment in Common Sense with the land combat is the way that forts work. Knowing when to siege out a fort and knowing when you've got zone of control. And sometimes it appears a little bit broken, because sometimes you think I should be able to move through there and you can't. And often you'll move an army thinking, right, I know the AI can't get to me because I've got forts in the way, and then the AI just marches straight through your fort. So there are a couple of little bits and pieces where it doesn't always quite make sense, but you should at least get the gist of the way that forts work and what they're actually doing for you. And as you can see, even though I've not been playing optimally in this video, you have been able to see a little bit about how combat works and how you siege out various different provinces. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope you found this rather long video somewhat useful in terms of how to actually fight the enemy. When we come back on the next video, we're actually going to be talking about the peace deals and what you need to do in order to take things from the enemy after the end of a successful war, or indeed what you need to do at the end of a war that you have lost. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next video, and until then, goodbye for now.